Welcome back. In this episode we're still looking at the defective fuel gauge. In the last episode we discovered that when the fuel tank was empty the gauge actually still read just over half. In this episode what we're going to do, we're going to take off this front fascia here. I've already taken the 4 screws out in the corners there, and we're going to have a look at the voltage regulator. I've got a new one. The voltage regulator it's sometimes attached to the back of the gauge, the speedo or the rev gauge, can't remember which one. In the past I'm sure I've seen it by taking this off, and you can see that way. So what I've done is I've taken the 4 screws off, like I said. They're just a Phillips head, and then with an Allen key there's a grub screw here and here. Just make sure that they're in the centre, so when you take the fascia off it comes straight out. So slacking these 2 off, the 4 screws and this faceplate should come off, and it should reveal the wiring, and I'm hoping the voltage regulator behind, and we'll see. Well, I've got a spare one, we'll replace it and see if that makes a difference. So here we go, I've removed the grub screws, so it's just a case of pulling each one off, and we'll put each one there and there, and then it should just kind of pop out. There we go. Now remembering these gauges are attached, and the light switch, so there is wiring behind here, so don't pull it too hard. As you can see there, we've pulled it out, got the original wiring, and there appears to be the voltage regulator, which isn't attached to anything. It's not grounded, which probably is our problem, I'd imagine, because it's supposed to be grounded. Now I'm sure normally that hole there is attached with a grub screw or a sort of a knurled screw to the back of one of these gauges. In theory, if it's grounded, we can ground it to any other wiring. I'll see if the grub screws, the screws there, could even be that screw. I don't know if you can see it. There's a screw there, knurled bit. Could even be that one. We'll give that a go. I'll test it with the multimeter, see if it's to ground. Imagine it will be. And we'll take it from there. If not, I'm thinking that other option, it could be, I'm not sure if it would work or not, but taking the ground off the back of this lamp here. I mean, it is to ground, and it needs to be grounded. Ground's a ground, it's not anything special. As long as we've got good continuity, it should work. So that's our backup. I'm going to primary here, secondary plan on here. The reason why this is all disconnected is because that was the original temperature gauge with back lamp. The new one from Smith's is a combined lube oil pressure and temperature. The temperature is a capillary tube, and the pressure is just literally a PVC tube attached to a T-piece of the oil pressure rail. It's internally lit with an LED, which is here. So we basically just got away with this, and we just repurposed the power. Just snipped it there, clipped it on there. So that's just redundant cable in there. I don't think it's even powered. That's a sender unit there. That would have been for the temperature sender, I would imagine. Yeah, it would have been because it's a temperature gauge. So yeah, we'll see if I can get into there. I'll test the earth first. So I've got the camera here balanced as best as I can on my knee, so I don't know how stable it's going to be. Now I'm going to put the multimeter lead onto the back of that knurled protrusion and onto the ground of the lamp. As you can hear there, we've got continuity to ground there. So if I can get that voltage regulator onto there, then that's the way forward. If not, we'll just put it through onto this, but I don't know if we'll have enough lead. It'd be better on the back of the gauge because it's secure, it's firm, it's not going to drop around or anything like that. Yeah, actually I'm looking in there now. I think I can see, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's the original one is right here. So that's the original. I'm pretty sure that's the original. There's no cables on it, and it's got the same shape. That could be the original. And then that's definitely aftermarket, that one. Yeah, that looks to be the original one up there. mean, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments or something, if it's for something else, but like I say, I read online that it's attached to the back of one of the gauges, and that could be it. See if I can get it off actually, and we'll just one for one. So I tried as best as I could to try and remove that without removing the gauge, the original one, but I couldn't find the screw for it. But so I've fitted the bottom one there. Put some power back on and see if the gauge reads any different. I mean, that is the original one. I'm not sure with it not being grounded whether there's damage internally to the component. I mean, like I say, I've got a spare one, so if there's no change to it, I'll just change it anyway. I mean, it wasn't grounded, so it didn't have a reference point really for the to differentiate between the two voltages. So we'll just give it a go. I mean, it's a quick check here, so we'll do that now. Right, so the battery's on. I've got the key here. Put the key into the ignition. Turn it on. Motor's coming on there for fans. Just knock that off, and we'll just check the fuel gauge here. And that's coming up. Comes up quite slow. Still going. Let's say the other day, before, it was about half. Seems to have stabilised just over a quarter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect it again, so it was how it was, and then we'll just test it one more time, just to make sure. And what I'll do is I'm going to put the new one on as well. I'll just give that a couple of more minutes just to stabilise out. We'll come back to that. So it's been a few minutes and it's sort of stopped in between a quarter and a half. So we'll take that as the reference for now. Let's say we'll turn the battery off and we will disconnect the earth again and just check the position. And then I'll put the new one on and we'll check it again and just... I'm sure it was above half. I literally can't remember now, but I'm sure it was over a half. But we'll soon see. So I've taken it back off there, it's just hanging as we found it, and just turn the power back on. We'll just wait for that to come back up and see where it sits. I'm hoping it was that and not the sender in the fuel tank, but we'll give that a few minutes again because it takes a while to come up, and then we'll check it. So I'm just checking the voltage when it's earthed and not earthed, and or grounded. And this is it ungrounded, so we're going to read it from here onto the ground. So this is on I, you've got I and B on this on the voltage regulator. I is the post regulated voltage, and we're going to just check that against ground, and I'm reading 10.85 volts. Now it should be 10. Input can vary because it's the alternator battery voltage, and the output should be around about 10. Now what we're going to do now is I'm going to put it onto the earth post. If I can just reach in there. Right, that's earth now. I'm going to test it again. So we're at 10.8 and we're going to test it there against ground again, and now we're reading 9.73. so there's a reduction. And I imagine that will be a steady, that's from the reference. Now, I'm not sure what happens if you run these regulators without a ground, but I imagine it's not going to be probably too good for it. I don't know if it'll overheat. Not sure. So what I'm going to do is I've got a brand new one. We're going to fit that, and we're not going to run it off ground. We're going to mount it because I know that ground is good. And then we'll retest it. I'm hoping for a lot closer to 10 volts, which will give us a good regulated voltage for that gauge. I do actually have another a fuel sender as well for the tank, which I'm probably going to change because I'm not convinced that the sender is good. I might be wrong, but I've got one anyway, and it doesn't take long to change. Probably the original. It might be there might be nothing wrong with it, bar like as in resistance wise, but you don't know with the float might have fuel in it. But we'll change that regulator and we'll get and see again what the voltage is. Another check there, I'll just show you the voltage, the gauge needle. As you can see there, it's in between 1/2 and 1/4, and I'm just gonna, that's grounded, and I'm gonna take it off that grounding post there, and I'm expecting to see that climb, be it slowly, obviously, but if we just give that a, if we just watch that, I think you'll agree there that that is rising slowly, coming up to 1/2 there now. So let's say we'll change that now. So this is the regulator itself. It's a sealed unit. I might prise the old one open. Let's see what's inside of it. Just curious. So it's got an orientation top, and you've got a connection called B and I. I is, let's say, that's the post voltage. So you've got pre-voltage coming in, two ears here to connect to, and they are, well, I'd say they're a male post, so you put female connector on, and then this is a female, and you put a male one on, so you can't get them the wrong way around. The wiring is, the 10 volts is a light green, and the unregulated alternator voltage is a dark green twin wire. And the way it works is the car itself is running 12 volts, and the alternator is putting out over 12 volts, you know, 12.8, 13, whatever it needs. When loads come on, the heater, indicators, lights, the coolant fan, that puts a strain on the alternator, and the voltage is always changing, it's always regulating itself. But for these gauges that need to put out a steady indication, if you're running, you know, in the tank, you've got the float. Now that's like a resistor, and as the fuel level drops, the resistance increases, decreases, however it's set up. Vice versa, the more fuel is in, the more resistance there may be, or less resistance. I'd imagine it's less resistance because the gauge climbs, allows more current to flow. But if your input is constantly changing, I assume that basically, regardless of your resistance, the input voltage is affecting it. So the gauge will be constantly moving. You'd be getting, well, basically what we've got inconsistency on the gauge. So with this regulator, and it's grounded, the grounding, I believe, is like a reference point between the two. I'm not sure the full ins and outs of how it works, but you're getting a variable input, and you're getting a steady 10 volt output. The 10 volt output, which is steady, goes to the gauge, which is constantly changing with fuel level, obviously decreasing, increasing when you top the car up, and that's how you get your fuel level. Like I say, at the moment we've got random, we haven't got consistency basically, so the fuel gauge doesn't know if it's getting filled, drained, whatever, because it's got no reference to base itself from. So we'll fit this new one. I got this from, where did I get this from? It was either Rimmer or Moss, can't remember. I think it was their eBay shop, regardless. Cheaper for the postage. Can't remember the price. Less than 20 quid. They're not that expensive. And hopefully, because this one hasn't been run, I'll have it pre-grounded, we'll put the connections on. I'm hoping that's it. I still can't believe there's actually a one in there already. And there's obviously that's a newer one. There's a reason why they changed that. The old one, the original, probably failed, and they just stuck a new one in there. Whether it was attached to something and it's fallen off, I don't know. But they knew enough to change the voltage regulator. But we'll go ahead and we'll swap it out now. So I've quickly just swapped the wires over there off camera. It's simple, just two wires, two spade connections there. Just pull them off, push new ones on. Like I say, they only go on one way because one's female, one's male, so you can't really bugger it up unless you cut the wires and re-splice them wrong. What we'll do now, we'll just put it back onto that knurled screw there, and I've got the knurled nut, and that's gone onto the back of the Speedo. Okay, there we go, that's it on. So there we got the flasher unit. But yeah, that's it on. That's the new one. I'll secure it a little bit better, and then we'll put the dash back together and we'll give it a test. So what we'll do there is now it's all in, we'll just align up the two. I know it's quite hard to see because I've got the camera balanced there, but the two handles for the heater controls, get them lined in, and we'll just sort of push the spacer back in, and it almost like clicks in. And then we've got the 4 screws that go in the corners. I'll do that off camera, but you get the idea. And then these controls just push on, and there's a grub screw that you tighten in, so when you pull them, you don't pull them back off. I'll do that, and then we'll check out the voltage regulator. So if anyone's wondering what size Allen key it is or where to get it from, the size, I'm unsure. It's a small one. I've not measured it, but if you want to get one, I got this from where did I get this from? This was from Rimmer Bros. And you can get these little controls as well with the grub screw. I actually ordered one because I wasn't sure whether one of them had stripped, but I got both of them off straight away, so we're all right on that. So once they're pushed on, just screw them down tight, and then they won't come off. That's the hot and the cold one, and this one on the left is the fan speed, so I'll just screw that one in as well. So that's them both in there now. See, just give them a test. This one, I always use the push one, so you want to make sure that one's firm. There we go. So I'm quite curious as to what's inside one of these. See if we can just pry it open. I'm not sure how easy it's going to be. I'm just breaking it, but use this flat blade screwdriver here. I'll just pry these turned ends over. I imagine it's going to be some sort of resistor sort of thing. Get some pliers on it actually. So you get the side snips in, just see if we can just bend all this back. Get a grip on it. There we go, it's coming back there. Oh, so this is like this must be a new, this is the new style. Got a few circuit boards on there. Not sure what they are. There's a few part numbers stamped on them. I imagine the original that's on the back of the dash is not like that. I don't think 1970s technology was quite chips and printed circuit boards like that. There's a part number there, 389-00-ISSA. But yeah, that's what the inside looks like. So I left the ignition on a little while, and it's showing between the 1/4 and the 1/2. Now what I'm going to do now, I'm going to drain the tank, and I expect that to go to 0. The last time we did this, when we drained the tank, the gauge just stayed exactly where it was. So I'm hoping when we drain it, it's going to show 0. That's the plan anyway. So like the last time we drained it, first thing, just disconnect the power, don't want any sparks. And we disconnected the input side of the mechanical lift pump there, and just used that hose, dropped it down to a bucket, and that's what we'll do now. I'll not film it because I've done it before, but you get the idea. We'll come back once the tank is drained. So I just drained the tank there, and as you can see, it is still showing up. The tank's empty, and it's just showing over 1/4 of a tank. I'll recheck the earth connection just to make sure it is actually earthed on that pin. It's not like a loose connection. We'll just have to take it from there. I've got a new sender unit. Look at the fuel sender in the tank might be stuck. We'll open that up now the tank's empty, and we'll have a look at that as well. I'll do that in another episode though, and hopefully we'll get to the culprit as to why this is showing that. I mean, I hope it's not the gauge. The gauge is pretty new. It's a new gauge, but we'll get there eventually.